Yeah, didn't want to get copyrighted on that one. Anyways, hello, welcome to Crime Bytes, the show where we talk about some truly bizarre and disturbing crime cases. My name is Liz, and I've got Detective Scoop Dog and his bacon snacks here. Today's True Crime Tuesday. Bleh! Today's True Crime Tuesday. So how many Squid Games fans do I have out there? Me and my son are just a tiny bit obsessed with the show, and I know we're not the only ones. The first season was Netflix's most watched series, and it received 6 Primetime Emmy Awards as well as a Golden Globe. And the second season just came out, and we literally just binged it in a day and are just chomping at the bits for season 3. There are so many theories about what will happen next too, and I can't wait to see. And I'm nervous about it at the same time. You know you are too. So the concept of the games is putting financially devastated people against each other, essentially, and making them compete in death games that are adaptations of simple games from their childhood. All with a 45.6 billion won, or what would be a $39.86 million prize for the winner. The catch is you literally need to be the last man standing to win that money. So alliances are formed and broken, hearts are broken, lives are lost. It's literally pure chaos. And apparently the world is here for it. And one question that many people were asking was, could this ever happen? Would this ever happen? Or did this ever happen? And that's what we're going to talk about today, along with some side trails involving some of the franchise's actors. But before we get into that, let's pause for a quick promotion. And if you're wondering what to do about your smile this year, Snow takes all of the guessing games out of it with literally something for everyone. You can start with their starter kit. That's what I did, and before the week was even over, my smile was a whole lot brighter. It's not perfect by any means, and I've done the diamond white strips as well, but that's literally all I've done, and as you can see, my teeth were seriously needing some love before, and now I've gone from smiling like this all the time to smiling as wide as I want, whenever I want, and it's literally all thanks to Snow. So check them out, and if you click the link in my description, they'll give you an additional 15% off of your purchase if you are a first-time shopper. So now you've got just one more reason to try them. Go give yourself something to smile about. Seriously. All right, let's get back to the games. The games. And today, our here he comes, our global version is the Olympics. And that's a bit different from the Squid Games, obviously. We pick competitions and put the best of the best against each other, all with their eyes on a gold medal. And in the Squid Games, you're looking at roughly $40 million. And your life, although you wouldn't really know the life part going into the games. But the Olympics are held every 4 years, each time in a different place of the world. The location is decided by the IOC or the International Olympic Committee, and its members will look at the cities that apply to host and vote which city for each year. They look at things including the Olympic movement's long-term goals, sustainability and legacy, and cost efficiency. People will be coming from literally all over the world to see and participate in these games. And the Olympics were just held in France in 2024, and apparently some of Paris's homeless population was provided some temporary housing and bused there. very conveniently, so that they were off the streets for the Olympics. But apparently when the Olympics were over, they ended up just kind of back to square one. And in 2028, apparently they're going to be in LA, so let's see what happens over there. But we're going to talk briefly about 1988 when they were held in Seoul, South Korea. I'm losing my bacon. They would be the last set of games in the Cold War, and South Korea looked at it as a way to really elevate its international image. And just like in France in 2024, South Korea in 1988 was a little concerned about how its homeless population would be making the city look. And it started to clean up the whole city, dubbing it environment beautification work. And beautifying Seoul's environment, including everything that could be considered unsightly, including people. And they would put these people that were taken off the streets into different homes, if you will, which were really more like labor camps. And even that is putting it kind of kindly. The one we are going to talk about today has been referred to as Korea's Auschwitz, if that helps. These social camps existed before the 1980s, but they really ramped up when the Olympic excitement hit Seoul. And the police had specific orders from the president to make sure that there were no panhandlers out on the street by the time the Olympics started. One camp in particular will raise the eyebrows of Squid Games fans, the Brothers Camp, located in Busan, South Korea. When you arrived at the Brothers Camp, you were given a tracksuit, very similar to the one in the Squid Games, and it had an identifying number on it. You were told, today you will abandon your rotten mentality and be born as a new human. In addition to homeless people, there were also children being picked up off the streets, and some of these children had homes. The police started getting rewards or points for people turned in, and at one point, that's when it started to get really bad. In Squid Games, a man would approach you in the subway and challenge you to a game of dachi, where you would usually get beat up, but in the end be handed an invitation to the games. In Busan, at the Busan station, rumors of police officers approaching vulnerable individuals before they were let off, usually never to be seen again, would begin to surface. Many people wouldn't survive the brothers' home either. Now, the brothers' home wasn't the only welfare camp around at that time, but it was considered one of the worst, as well as an inspiration for the Squid Game series. So we're going to focus on that one specifically. It was established as an orphanage in 1960 and converted into Busan's official house for the vagrants by 1975. This camp held up to 3,500 people at a time when the recommended capacity was only 500 people. Anywhere from 1,000 of them at a time were children around the ages of 12 to 13, but sometimes as young as 4. There were mostly young adults there, and there were also some elderly people. Conditions were not pleasant, to say the least, either. You had a tracksuit and a number, and your head was shaved, but it was all choppy, like they could care less when you entered. You had to march in unison to your rooms, and at bathing time, you would get 3 seconds of water. 3 seconds. And to wash, you got salt. And if you spoke up about anything, you would get beat up. And then there were the games. Just like in Squid Games, the people housed had to participate in different games at the guard's command. And sometimes they would die from them. They had their own version of Fight Club, basically, and it was termed Calgary, where two people would fight until one of them died or almost died. Even if you were a child, you could only stop when your nose was broken and you lost teeth or you ended up with a concussion. In another game, for punishment, they would roll you up in a blanket and then roll you down the hall. But while that was happening, the guards would kick, beat, and stomp on you, including your head. Then there was Hiroshima, where everyone would have to run to the top bunk and just hang from their legs with their heads facing down for as long as they could. Obviously, you can't do that for very long, and people would faint or fall off the bed and drop on their heads at best, leaving them disabled and disfigured. Motor vehicle was another game where you stood in front of a guard and then had to put your turn signals up, but this one was just really another excuse for them to beat you with a stick. And when you got beat, they would give you salt as an antiseptic for whatever wounds you would receive. Salt. Apparently at one point there was a young man who ripped his stomach open in an attempt to escape, and he got salt for it. Like the Squid Games, these players or inmates were seen as less than human, and unlike the Squid Games, there was no huge cash prize at the end if you survived. You basically, you survived to live another day in the brothers' home, and maybe you could hope to leave one day if you were still capable of being hopeful. On top of this, the people housed at the brothers' home were routinely sexually abused. There was a psych ward, which sounds like a great thing and well needed, but it was really basically just to drug anyone into submission that couldn't be easily beaten into submission. And if things couldn't get any worse with this situation, there was an element of human trafficking as well, where Korean female children were being adopted out to a bunch of different countries. And some of them out of the brothers' home, out under false pretenses, and some of them even had families at home. It's extremely scary stuff. Before we talk about how it all came down, let's look at the stories of two boys who ended up surviving the brothers' home. In 1984, an 8-year-old boy named Han Jong-sun was out for the day with his father and sister. His father had a lot to do that day, and he decided, for whatever reason, he would leave his children with an officer at the police substation for a few minutes, and apparently there was some sort of misunderstanding, or the officer was looking for those points or something, but the children were brought to the brothers' home. Han remembers crying and trying to explain that their father would be back for them, but to no avail. He was only beat and told that he was being too loud, and their ordeal would last around 3.5 years. At 8 years old, Han was the youngest in his group, and his work included folding envelopes and making toothpicks. This is how he describes his experience there. The only thing I was provided from the center was a set of blue training suits, rubber shoes, and a piece of nylon underwear. I rarely had a chance to take a shower. Lice were all over my body, and we had rotten fish and stinking barley rice every day. Literally every day. Almost all of the inmates were malnourished. 4 people slept in zigzags in a small bed. Rape occurred every night in the corner of the dormitory. This poor child. Another boy, 13-year-old Choi Seung-woo, was literally abducted by a police officer on his way home from school. When the officer stopped him to question him, he had half a loaf of bread in his backpack left over from his lunch at school, and he just wanted to eat it later. The officer automatically assumed that he had stolen it, or he ended up using it as a way to take Choi in, and really started grilling him. And I don't know exactly how this went down, but apparently the officer held a lighter up to his genitals until he confessed, which he finally did, saying he stole the bread so that the officer would take the fire away from his privates. After he was taken right to the brothers' home. And his platoon had an inmate who had risen to the ranks of leader and started by pouring cold water all over Choi and raping him every night for 3 nights until he was transferred to a different area. Shortly after he arrived, he basically realized he had found himself in a death camp at 13 years old. His parents would search for him too. Apparently his brother had been taken away as well, and they would put in missing persons reports and even go as far as to go to the brother's home protesting and knocking at the door. At first to no avail, but then in 1986 the center managers would finally release the brothers, a year before the entire home would end up being shut down. Park In-guen, trying with these names, was the director of the home when it finally ended up being closed down, and he had been the director since 1977. The first of the investigations occurred before Han and Choi ever even arrived at the brothers' home. In 1982, a man with the last name King would submit a petition regarding his brother, who he stated had been abused while he was at the brothers' home. And in response, Director Park would claim that this was false. It was all false allegations, and Kang would actually be sentenced to 8 months in prison. Then in 1986, that same year that Choi's parents were protesting to see their children released, a local hunter would report that some of the laborers who were logging nearby on a mountain were being assaulted by the guards with clubs. Once this workshop was investigated, the district prosecutor's office allowed a full-on search of the brothers' home, and a full-on investigation would follow. They would conclude that the inmates at the center were involuntarily sent there and subjected to forced labor, and it was unpaid. They would also find a bank receipt for a deposit equal to $10 million in Director Park's office. Over 500 people were known to have died there from mistreatment, but it is speculated that that number is a lot higher. Park In-guen would only receive a 2.5-year sentence for embezzlement of state subsidies. He would die of natural causes in 2016. Han had lost contact with his father and sister. His father actually ended up at the brothers' home for some time as well, but he would end up finding both of them getting treated for mental issues related to their time that they spent there in 2007. He would continue to fight for the issue to be investigated and hold a one-man protest in 2012 in front of the National Assembly building. He would also go on to write a book in 2013 entitled The Child Who Survived: How We All Became an Accomplice. Choi would join him in his protests in 2013, and he would host his own rooftop protest, after which he was placed in a hospital, and he is still receiving psychotherapy sessions for what he's been through, which, can you blame him? That same year, the Brothers Home Survivors Group was formed. Protests for answers continued. In 2015, survivors all shaved their heads to demonstrate solidarity, and then in 2017, survivors would walk around 500 miles from the actual location of the brothers' home to the Blue House in Seoul, which is basically like Korea's White House. The walk would take them approximately 2 months to complete. In 2019, Choi would begin a hunger strike in front of the National Assembly building, where he would eventually collapse from exhaustion. This poor man. They were attempting to amend the Framework Act on settling the past affairs for Truth and Reconciliation Commissions to investigate the brothers' home case and other historical issues that were like it. And in May of 2020, the act would pass and the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions was relaunched in December of 2020 to investigate a variety of the issues this one included. By 2022, 544 survivors had applied for investigation. After the conclusion of the investigation, the state was recommended to officially apologize to restore honor to these victims and their families, and to seek ways to heal their trauma. So that's pretty significant. Busan in particular was required to establish a budget system and regulations to assist victims of the brothers' homes specifically. Obviously, this is a very complex issue that has been underway and ongoing for over 50 years, so time will tell, but it does look like Han and Choi's perseverance and efforts are showing some results, thankfully. In a later study, one of the guards at the brothers' home would recall having mixed feelings about what happened there. He would say that he saw himself as a real bastard, but he did what he had to survive. Sound familiar when we're thinking about Squid Games, anyone? Anyways, the land where the brothers' home stood would be sold and it would be demolished, and an apartment complex would be put there instead. They would find a lot of human remains while this was happening, and they would kind of be treated as if they had no living relatives. So what do you guys think? The Squid Game series was written and directed by Hwang Hyuk. Oh my gosh. For Netflix. He actually wrote the story in 2009 and couldn't get anyone to pick it up until 2019 when Netflix was looking to expand their foreign selection. Hwang cites his own economic struggles, class disparity in South Korea, and capitalism as inspiration for the series. Hwang also cites reading a comic book about a group of people who fell into a deadly game, leading people to speculate about the Hunger Games and Battle Royale as also possible inspirations, as well as other mangas including Gantz and Future Diary. But when it comes down to it, there's nothing quite like the Squid Games, is there? I'm going to show you one more picture before we start talking about a couple of the actors from the Squid Games. This is a photo from the Rothschild Surrealist Ball in 1972. Does this make you think of anything? Anyhow, the richest family in the world at the time, the Rothschilds, would host this ball where you could attend wearing black tie and a surrealist mask to be led to a table filled with taxidermy turtles and food covered on a mannequin with very interesting titles like Sir's Loin. Only a little creepy there. Audrey Hepburn apparently attended wearing a birdcage on her head, which I thought was interesting. Oh, and you're led to this creepy table through a maze by a cat butler. It sounds so trippy. And the plates were covered in this black fur. Ew. But are you getting a VIP vibe from this? Because I definitely am. And there's conspiracies about human hunts that took place as well, but we'll leave that for another day. Now let's go ahead and look at some of the actors' brushes with the law. Ji-hoon, or player 456, is the show's main character, I would say, for the most part, and he is played by Lee Jung-Jae. As he was a growing actor, Lee was arrested for driving under the influence when he veered into an adjacent lane and crashed into another car. His blood alcohol level was 0.269, which is over 3 times over our legal limit, so that's not very good. And his license was revoked, then revoked again in 2002 when he was arrested for the same charges. He also racked up a couple assault charges in the year 2000 when he was kind of into the bar scene. And these days, he's known for both playing Ji-hoon and for giving back. In 2022, he donated 100 won to the Hope Bridge Disaster Relief Association to help victims of a massive wildfire in Jeonbuk. Next, we have Oh Ying-soo. And this one it pains me. I loved his character so much. He played Oh Inam, the man behind the games in season 1 who masqueraded as a player with dementia. And his kind demeanor and his ability to literally smile in the face of death, maybe because he didn't quite know what was going on, but it made his character huge in the plot, not to mention like his behind the scenes. And he acted it so brilliantly. Unfortunately, in March of 2024, he was convicted of sexual harassment and given an 8-month prison sentence that has been suspended for 2 years, as well as he needs to attend sexual violence treatment for 40 hours. Apparently, he was inappropriately touching a female actress, which included hugging her, holding her hand, and kissing her cheek, which no means no, but I don't know. That seems like a lot to get a prison sentence for, in my opinion. Not that it's okay by any means, but I'll leave it there with that is what apparently went down. It apparently has also destroyed his acting career, which I'm sorry, I do think that's unfortunate. And I guess we'll see if he ends up seeing any prison time. I don't like anything about this little part, so let's keep on going. And hey, let's get Scooty up here. Hi, buddy. He's falling asleep on me. We're going to do our real facts with Scoot Dog. Today's real fact is that in most cases in life, there's room for a comeback. If you mess up, it's best to own it. That's what you should do with every mistake. You own it, but then you learn from it and you move past it. And in the spirit of comebacks, today's positive highlight is going to be Choi Seung-hyun, or T.O.P., or Thanos in Squid Game Season 2. If you don't know, casting Choi in and of itself was this huge controversy over in South Korea because his goofy, lighthearted, kind of druggy rapper character didn't hit too far off from his actual past. And he got into rapping young and became the lead rapper for Big Bang, a K-pop group, in 2006. In 2010, he would go on to collaborate with G-Dragon and then release 2 of his own singles in 2013. In 2017, he was arrested and convicted for, wait for it, marijuana use, which is bigger over there, and actually led to a bunch of his fans turning against him. After his arraignment, he ended up overdosing on anti-anxiety medication and had to be hospitalized, which that's really sad. He would receive 2 years of probation for his marijuana use, which he did admit to using a few times. And in 2022, when Big Bang would reunite, his label would announce that he was dropped from it, or basically that their relationship had terminated at that point. And then he landed the Squid Games. Hwang Hyuk, and I can't say that man's name for the life of me, I'm so sorry, the director of the Squid Games, defends his choice, saying that I felt that it took him a lot of guts in a way to portray a character, especially someone who shares a lot of similarities that are quite negative to him as a person too. So I think it took him a lot of courage to take on that role. And I agree with him 100%. Korea didn't take so kindly to it though, at least not at first, saying that druggy actor T.O.P. and his bad acting made Squid Game 2 unbearable to watch. He even was blurred out. His face was blurred out in a picture when they were talking about the Squid Games on Korea's Live this morning. But international viewers, myself included, just ate him up. He quickly became a fan favorite. And if you know, you know. So that's going to do it. We'll see. We've got another, 5 or 6 months until season 3 drops, and thoughts about what might happen next are just flying. Do you have any favorite ideas? I'm wondering if they're going to do that 5 people in a train scenario. That's been going around. Or what about human chess? I love chess, so I would love and hate to see human chess at the same time. What about you? Do you have anything that you really love or hate about the series? If so, drop it in the comments for me. Did any of you guys try making those dalgona cookies? We did, and we died every time. Alright, next Tuesday is going to be the last Tuesday in February. Thank God, I can't wait till spring. And I didn't really deliver much bad romance this month. It's romance month. So I'll close out this month with another story about love gone wrong for you guys. And until then, be sure to stay safe out there. Bye!
La 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 la, ha! La 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 la, ha! La 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 la, ha! La 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 la, ha! La 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 la, ha! La 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 la.